Breath of the Wild is an important game. It belongs to one of Nintendo's most prized and beloved series with a long and significant track record of repeatedly innovating. The original was one of the first adventure games, A Link to the Past perfected 2D Zelda. Ocarina of Time defined what it meant to be an adventure game in the third dimension. Wind Waker did a tonal 360 and innovated with the original art style. And then came Breath of the Wild, that fundamentally changed the core gameplay that linked all of these games. No longer did you follow the standard formula of get used to the controls, set out for a mission, hunt through MacGuffins, go out into the world and complete some dungeons, do some side quests and kill Ganon. You could do anything, and we knew it. Which is why I'm confused when I hear people talking about items, old locations, and traditional dungeons when speculating about the future of the series. Not to be a shady bitch or anything, but in this Zeltic video, he talks about what he wants for the next game, including the return of Sheik from Ocarina of Time and specific mechanics from older games, such as the Kinstones from the Minish Cap. This is a common gripe I have with lots of discussion and speculation about the sequel, because it shows a lack of understanding as to what made Breath of the Wild so special, what made it so revolutionary for the series. Breath of the Wild, more than any other game in my opinion, is the easiest to condense into 3 words, because the mechanics and core elements of the game are so polished and pronounced. Mine would be open, scenic, and rich, but there are a litany of other words you could choose. To return to more linear dungeons, contrived gameplay mechanics, and to cling to old characters in the series feels counter to the core philosophy of Breath of the Wild: freedom. Now, of course the game isn't perfect, and there are flaws that need to be addressed in the sequel. However, the point I want to stress is that whatever follows this game has to be in line with the precedent set by Breath of the Wild, while developing on it and staying in the same world. An honestly unenviable task. One common complaint was the lack of traditional Zelda dungeons, a problem that seems hard to resolve while sticking to the design philosophy of Breath of the Wild. Dungeons are possibly the single most interesting and delightful thing about Zelda as a franchise. Each a labyrinth, each a self-contained challenge with a distinctive atmosphere, interesting mechanics, and a satisfying process of slowly, bit by bit, opening doors and inching your way close to the boss, eventually making this once large and daunting space feel small and navigable. Recently I played Skyward Sword and reintroduced myself to just how fun dungeons can be, an experience that is almost completely lacking in Breath of the Wild. I, unlike many, actually love the Divine Beasts. 14-year-old me was obsessed with the ancient techno aesthetic and found their eeriness fantastic, in particular Varna Boris and Varuto. But it's undeniable that Divine Beasts lack both the puzzle-solving and aesthetic diversity to say Breath of the Wild provides a fulfilling puzzle-solving experience. I understand the reasoning behind the uniform Sheikah aesthetic, which confined puzzle-solving to specific cut-off areas. Traditional dungeons would be completely broken with the advanced and developed physics of Breath of the Wild, but most importantly, one of the hardest things to do would be to fit in the items. Items have been a very important part of Zelda history, not just inside dungeons but outside them too. Part of the fun of a Zelda game, just like the dungeon, is unlocking new areas and trinkets using the items you've earned. Locking off sections of the world like this would completely ruin the flow of Breath of the Wild. No longer could you visit everything you see, going against, say it with me, the core design philosophy. Now, you could argue in response to this that you don't have to have items usable in the world, just make them dungeon specific, so you still have the intrigue of new items without locking off the world. But a previous issue with the franchise was useless dungeon items. The spinner in Twilight Princess comes to mind, an item that saw good use in its dungeon but wasn't used much in the rest of Hyrule. The only way I can see dungeons being a feature of Breath of the Wild 2 is if they drop the items and stick with designing dungeons without them. Now, take this with a grain of salt, I can't predict the future, but I think that dungeons are going to be centered around dungeon-specific gimmicks rather than items. In fact, the item problem has already been discussed by the designers. I think that this is a problem that will be faced regularly. In a way, the base game is too good to give it items. The other main change to gameplay, I expect, is a change to the overworld itself, because Aonuma and his team are going to have to do a lot to convince players that they aren't just retreading the same Hyrule. And here I see a great opportunity. In Breath of the Wild, we see Hyrule in ruin, reclaimed by nature, with large parts lingering in a forgotten melancholy. Telling by the age of Link and Zelda, this game probably happens after the end of Breath of the Wild, and probably follows the process of rebuilding Hyrule. Doubtless, after the threat of Calamity Ganon is gone, life can once again return to Hyrule, notably with Hyrule Castle Town rebuilt. I think that the only way I can see them keeping the same world and making a new game is if the culture of Hyrule changes, which provides good opportunities for comparisons with Breath of the Wild. Imagine being able to visit the same NPCs 5 or 10 years later, with some moving settlements and having their stories developed. Another possibility in regards to the world itself is expansion beyond Hyrule. The trailer shows significant underground passages, possibly extending to lands beyond Hyrule. If this is the case, then the possibilities are endless. However, I'm skeptical about this possibility. The very same trailer shows Hyrule Castle rising from the ground in Hyrule, suggesting that the game does, in fact, take place in the same world. With the already massive size of Hyrule, it's unlikely that vast areas are going to be added on top of that, especially with the natural borders being around the edge of Hyrule. Honestly, as a Zelda fan, I'm of course excited for a new game. Dungeons would be cool, a new story would be cool, but I just get a bad feeling about this. I love this version of Hyrule, and I understand why they want to reuse it, but I really can't imagine playing another game in the same world without it feeling like DLC. I just like the approach while understanding the predicament they're in. Sure, they could spend years longer making a brand new world, with brand new environments and a brand new story. They could introduce dungeons and all the things we've talked about. But wouldn't it just feel suffocating? Because after Breath of the Wild, anything would feel like a box. Like, comment, and subscribe.
Like, comment, and subscribe.
Come on, the rest of you too.
Comment, leave it in the comments.
Yeah, leave it in the comments. Smash that comment button. Emily, you do it too now. Say.
What?
Like, comment, and subscribe. Come on, you bitch.
Why?
Just say like, comment, and subscribe, goddammit.
Why?
Because I need them to like, comment, and subscribe. Your guys will like, comment, and subscribe for me, right? Alright, fine, whatever.